Welcome, everyone. My guest for this special bonus episode today is Brooklee Han, our senior real estate reporter who is also a former Olympian, to talk about the ways her experience at the top of the ice skating world have translated into her current role. Before we dive in, I want to thank our sponsor, Trust and Will, for making this episode possible. Brooklee, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. So a couple weeks ago, I had you on to talk about all things real estate and updates on different lawsuits. And that is your job with us. You're our senior real estate reporter. People in our industry know you for your coverage of the settlement lawsuits of all sorts of things in real estate. But you have this whole other side that I wanted to do as this bonus episode because people may not realize that you are a former Olympian. And, as the Olympics is winding down, as skating has been such an incredible part of this Olympics, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain there. So maybe tell people about your Olympic history.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was a real estate reporter here at HousingWire, I was an international and Olympic figure skater. I represented Australia. My family is from Australia, and I have dual citizenship with the US and Australia. And I began kind of competing internationally back in 2010 as a junior and ended up competing about 9 seasons and was selected to go to the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia. As part of the Australian team and as our sole lady there in the women's discipline in figure skating. Figure skating was and still is such a large part of my life. It had been a dream of mine to compete at an Olympic level, as it is so many young kids in a variety of different sports. And I was one of the lucky few that was able to kind of make that dream come a reality, through lots of hard work and sacrifice from myself and my parents and my coaches and my teachers in school who were also incredibly supportive of me. I was so lucky with skating that I got to travel around the world and meet so many incredible people from so many different walks of life and still have some of those friendships and relationships to this day. And so it was such a important and special part of my life.
You are absolutely. So if anybody wants any advice about different airports or different places to stay, you have been literally everywhere and you know all of the tricks of the trade. You're like, oh, in Paris, do this, in London, do this. And I mean, you've just been everywhere. It's really fun to talk to you. The discipline that it requires to be an Olympian. What I see in your life is that you've applied that discipline now in your career as well, and you're still very involved in the industry. But talk about when did you start skating? How old were you?
So I started skating a little bit before my 5th birthday. I was very fortunate in that my parents exposed me to all sorts of different things growing up. I grew up in the Boston area, so we would go to the Boston Pops every year at Christmas time to see the Christmas concert. We'd go and see the Boston Ballet and see the Nutcracker every year. My parents were both heavily involved in equestrian sports. My dad was the junior young rider champion of Australia in 3-day eventing. And my mom worked for Tad Coffin, who won the gold medal for the US in the 1976 Olympics in 3-day eventing. So I, grew up with a pony and horses and was around that world because that was my parents' world. But my grandmother and my mom loved figure skating. And so we'd go to see Stars on Ice every year when it was in town. And I loved it. I was absolutely sold. That was what I wanted to do. I was 2 years old sitting there glued way past my bedtime, not wanting to leave, not wanting to look away from the ice. And I asked my mom, I was like, I want to do that. And she's like, I want to be in the show. And she's like, well, you have to go to the Olympics and do stuff to be in this show. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I was persistent and kind of begged, and eventually they were like, okay, yeah, you can have skating lessons. And so started skating around 5 years old. And I was definitely not the most talented kid out there, and not the most naturally talented, but I loved it. My mom was also very clever and sewed polar fleece padding into the bum and the knees of my little pants that I had. So all the other kids were falling over and crying because it hurt. And I was like, well, it doesn't hurt. There's padding there. So that definitely helped kind of foster my love of it as well. But I progressed through the sport at a fairly kind of average pace. Again, I wasn't very naturally gifted. Took me a long time to get some of my kind of earlier jumps, some of the easier jumps. But I was persistent. I wanted it. I kept, maybe it was a bit foolhardy, but I didn't give up. And at the same time, so many of my other competitors and other skaters that I had grown up with were giving up, finding out that school was more exciting, being a normal high school student, or finding other passions as well. But skating was the one thing that I absolutely loved. And when I was about 12 years old, I had reached a point where I was kind of stuck at a plateau and I wasn't really progressing. And so my parents were like, you can do this one last competition that I'd qualified for, and then do a week of camp at the International Skating Center in Simsbury, Connecticut. And then, you have other things going on in life. I was playing the violin. I, was riding a little bit still. And I was at that camp that I met one of my longtime coaches, Sergey Vipan, and ended up skating with him for 9 seasons. He was the coach that took me to the Olympics and kind of brought me from basically not very not very successful and not very far in my career to where I am today in a lot of ways. And so I'm very grateful for him for that. But yeah, it was one of those moments where it was like, okay, I kind of clicked with him and stuff started progressing, and went to some qualified for a national competition in the US at a lower level, and then started getting more jumps in the next season. We had been in contact with Australia since I was little because we had one of the top dance teams in Australia live with us for a long time. They were training in Connecticut with a coach there. And so we had been in touch with them for a long time and said, she has triples now, would you like to potentially see her? And so I went over and did a ranking competition, and then ended up getting some junior Grand Prix, which is kind of like the first stage of some international events as a junior skater. And then, that first season went to my first junior world championships and kind of went from there. And the Olympics was just such a special culmination of all of that hard work. And I'm at that point in time, I could have retired and gone to school, but I ended up continuing going and pursuing my college degree at the same time, which was challenging, but also a lot of fun. And I still am so incredibly proud of kind of the second half of my career and everything that I achieved on the ice kind of in that later stage. And it was very rewarding to kind of pursue skating and still achieve things and compete at a high level, but almost be free of like feeling like I had to qualify for an Olympic Games again. Because I had done that, and obviously I would have loved to have gone to a second, but still, some incredible things that I achieved later on.
That explains so much when you talk about training at that level and being in college, Brooklyn, because you are one of the hardest working people I've ever met. So while you're our senior real estate reporter, which is a very demanding job, I mean, we have, daily multiple deadlines every day. There's tons of stuff you have to do that. You still are up at the rink training people at what time every day?
This year, right now, I have one girl who I'm so impressed with. She's 17 and she's not an elite skater, but she's 17 getting herself to the rink at 5:30 in the morning, and we're on at 5:45 every day, pretty much.
Amazing. I know that even when I'm on a different time zone, like when I was working from the UK last year, and I would, obviously I'm on a completely different time zone. I get on at like 3 in the morning, and you're like, I mean, 3 in the morning your time, and you're like, oh hey, and you're answering me. I'm like, what are you doing up? There was no getting up earlier than you, even when I was on 7 hours, past you. It was hilarious.
Yeah, no, I've always known that I wanted to stay involved with skating somehow, but my parents were very encouraging that I pursue my education. I was very fortunate that the town that I grew up in, I was able to attend public school from kindergarten all through 12th grade, and was, just in a normal school with normal other kids. And that was such a great balance to kind of everything I was doing at the rink all day. And, if stuff at school was hard, I had skating to kind of refocus and have, a different outlet. And if I was struggling on the ice or if I was injured, I still had school and something else to do. And so I've always kind of had that balance. It was more challenging in college in some ways, but I was lucky with some great supportive professors, both when I was at Wesleyan and then later on when I was at Southern Methodist University. But I think I always like this is normal for me, and maybe not getting up at the crack of dawn every day because I did skate early, but I didn't skate quite as early as some of my kids skate nowadays. But I love having that balance. I love being busy, but it's just so rewarding to coach and to work with skaters of all ages. I have some adult skaters. A couple of them are preparing for adult nationals in about 6 weeks. And they're so much fun to work with because uh, they have such internal motivation, and they're doing it because they want to, and it's because their passion and something that they, have an outlet outside of work or outside of raising their kids. And so it's fun to kind of work with them and have their goals. I'm the choreographer for a boy who's on the national development team. His goals are obviously very different than some of my adult skaters. And so it's fun to kind of work with him at this stage of his career, and kind of come up with new programs and really stretch him artistically. He's a very athletic skater and has some incredible technical jumps and technical ability, but he's a 13, 14-year-old boy, so he's not the most artistic skater on the face of the earth. But we're really trying to push that this year, and I'm really excited with some of the things that we've come up with this season for him. Then I have others that I work with on skating skills. I was a single skater, so I did the jumps and the spins, but I've also done a lot of ice dance, which is partnered, no jumps, and the smaller lifts, not the overhead lifts that the pair teams do. And so I work a lot on skating skills with people and pattern dances, and it's fun to help skaters find that, different avenues in skating. Maybe they don't love jumping or they're not great at it and they're looking for something else to pursue alongside of, trying to increase their technical skills. And so it's fun to kind of help them find that other passion. And then I also coach at Boston University as the ice dance coach for the Boston University figure skating team, which is so much fun and so rewarding. The college atmosphere is very different than the elite skating community. We still, on the BU team, we have kids competing on the Junior Grand Prix or at a national level. So we still have some very highly competitive kids, but at the same time, it's like a collegiate gymnastics team. So it's a different atmosphere. It's a team atmosphere. And they're all there because they want to, not because mom and dad are making them. Honestly, some parents would probably prefer if they were studying and pursuing their academics more. But we're fortunate to have a ton of ice, and so they can kind of find a balance between both, and not feel like they have to give up skating and give up something they love just because they're going to college. And so that's been so rewarding and so fun as well.
When did you know that you wanted to be a journalist?
I always loved writing as a kid, but I absolutely did not get along with my English teachers through most of middle school and high school. And I was at Wesleyan at my freshman year of college, and I decided to take a creative nonfiction writing class after swearing that I would never take another English class again in my life. But I thought this class sounded really interesting. It fit in well with my schedule, which was always challenging to find. And I discovered that there was a whole different way of like the discipline of English that was not just reading something and telling people what I thought about it. It was, creating and crafting my own narratives and stories. And as I kind of worked in that more, but then also as my skating career progressed, I realized that I um, loved the storytelling aspect of skating.
So amidst all of the ice skating and all the physical preparation for that and the mental preparation, where did your desire to become a journalist fit in?
Yeah, so as a child, I loved writing, but I didn't always get along with my English teachers in middle school and high school. And really, like, I was a math science kind of kid. That was not my scene. And then my freshman year of college at Wesleyan, I decided to take a creative nonfiction writing class, and it kind of opened my eyes to this other side of like the English discipline, and that it wasn't just, reading books and disagreeing with my teachers about what I thought this one metaphor meant or something like that. And it really opened my eyes to this ability to create and tell my own stories. And I was also then able at Wesleyan to take a literary journalism class with Ariel Levy, who is a Wesleyan alumni and at that time was a staff writer at the New Yorker. That again really opened my eyes to kind of the storytelling that is in journalism. And I really kind of fell in love with that. And it was around kind of that same time as well that I also became a bit more involved in the creation of my own programs and this idea of still telling stories on the ice, and creating a narrative through my performance. And at the same time that I had to craft that narrative, I also had to fit in all these technical skills that were required. Similarly to in journalism, how I have information that I need to get in there, but if I just put a bullet point list of facts, that isn't always the most compelling read and not always the best way to get some of this information across to people. And so over time, and more so now that I do a lot more choreography work, I've kind of found a nice balance between those two. And obviously choreography I get to be a bit more creative and I get to play with movement and shapes, but I still love kind of crafting narratives and using my words to tell stories. Sometimes it's funny with some of my choreography students. I will sit down with a Google Doc with them and we'll take their piece of music and maybe they have an idea for a story or I have an idea for a story and we'll kind of work together to craft a narrative that we're going to tell with their program and with this music. And then, you go in and figure out where you have to put in the elements and what the music is telling you to do where. And so, yeah, it's a joke with some of my kids that, this is what happens when you hire a journalist to choreograph your program.
Well, and we benefit on our from our side on your, that ability to tell a story, right? You've really distinguished yourself among the real estate journalists. I feel like in our space to be like someone who can take these really dense lawsuit stories and make them understandable and also like, okay, why should I care? Like it's the 13th lawsuit for this one company, what and really get to like this is why it matters for your business. It's not easy.
No, it's not. It's definitely a challenge. And, that's one thing I love too about journalism and skating is, skating, I was constantly pushing myself to learn new skills or improve things. And in journalism, I'm constantly having the opportunity to learn new things, expand my knowledge and my understanding of the world around me. And that's just so much fun.
So you've already talked about the creativity that you developed, as a skater and what that looked like and how that has, implications for your job now. What other things do you feel like, especially being an Olympian, competing at that level, what does that mean for your everyday life or your everyday work now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of discipline and a lot of, you know, the ability to kind of buckle down and focus and get the job done. And, not shy away from challenges or when things get hard or maybe overwhelming. That's honestly when I do my best work, I feel like, because, that was so much my environment for so long. And yeah, I think, there's more so now, in this day and age, conversation about, hiring elite athletes into different fields that obviously, are very different from their prior experience. But um, there is such I think, a benefit to bringing some of these elite athletes into the workplace because of that, determination, hard work, ability to focus, ability to set goals and, work toward those goals and different objectives. And it's been great to see kind of some of that workplace culture shift a little bit over the past, I'd say probably 5, 10 years, because athletes really are kind of a secret weapon, I think, at a lot of different companies. And that's why I love talking to some different athletes or even like performance artists as well that have transitioned from their prior career into the real estate space because, even though we may have come from different sporting backgrounds, we're now kind of in the same area. But it's fun to hear their stories of how, the lessons they learned as an elite athlete have served them so well in their professional life now, in real estate or title insurance.
What is it like watching the Olympics? This has been a really fun Olympics, I think, this Winter Olympics. As somebody who is a former Olympian, what does that look like?
It's a lot of fun. This year was really special because I still obviously have a lot of friends competing both in figure skating and then some of my former teammates in the Australian team that are competing in kind of ski and snowboard disciplines. And so it's fun to cheer them on. I was so excited. Australia has had its best Winter Olympics ever in terms of medals and results. And so that was really awesome to see. But with the figure skating this year, there's been so many kids that I've known since they were little that are competing and at this stage, and it's been, it's so fun to remember them cheering me on during my Olympic experience and them being so excited for me to now see them achieving their goals and, having seen and witnessed so much of their careers and hard work over the years and, them to achieve this dream has been so special. But it's been a really, overall, I felt like a really strong Olympics. There's been some great performances. And it's just fun to see the athletes put out these performances on such a special, such a big stage, knowing all of the hard work and the years and the determination and the setbacks and everything that went into the creation of that moment for them.
I feel like specifically in figure skating, the gold medal winner from the U.S., right? She, from my perspective, echoed kind of what Simone Biles, what we saw from Simone Biles in the last Olympics, where it was like, maybe we're hopefully moving into a space where mental health is also really prized and not just like, because in the past it's, I would think the whole discipline is like, just keep going. It doesn't matter. And like, this is the ultimate goal. And seeing people who took breaks or who are approaching it differently, I feel like that's probably healthier for everybody.
Absolutely. No, Alyssa Liu, who won the women's discipline earlier this week for the U.S., she is such a special athlete. She was, absolutely a child prodigy, and then, went to the Olympics in 2022 in Beijing, and ultimately took a step back from and retired for 2 years before deciding to come back on, her own terms and setting kind of her own rules for how she wanted to approach skating, and just seeing an athlete, be in it for all the right reasons and be in it because they love it and have that kind of desire to just do their best and be their best, be their primary driving factor is just so special to see. And I think, that's why Alyssa has, part of why she's been so successful in this comeback. And, so much credit to her team and everyone around her for, supporting her and, allowing her to kind of be who she wants to be on and off the ice and supporting that. But yeah, it's been interesting being in the sport as long as I have and to kind of see this culture shift right now and, try to be part of it as well as a coach nurturing kind of this next generation of athletes and reflecting on my own career and my own experience as an athlete and knowing kind of some of the things that I went through that maybe I don't want my skaters to go through, but also, taking that knowledge and that experience and using that to kind of hopefully make me into a better coach myself and, just be able to focus on fostering that love of the sport because obviously it's something so special to me and I want to pass on that love and enjoyment to all of my students.
Well, Brooklyn, thank you so much for letting me, ask you all these questions about this whole other part of your life. Pull back the curtain a little bit, something that's so important to you, and just we so appreciate your capacity to work, your ability to see the situation, find the story, connect with people in our industry has been really valuable for us at HousingWire. So thank you so much for the good work you do on the real estate side, and thanks for pulling back the curtain a little bit on this other part.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm just so grateful for you guys for, supporting me as a journalist and kind of supporting me coming into an industry I didn't have a ton of background in and taking a chance. And I'm just so excited to be here and have had the opportunity to share my story with everybody today.
Amazing. We will talk again soon. I'm sure it will be on, potentially some more lawsuit coverage. You never know.
Well, yeah, I fear it will be, but
I
well, thank
fear
you
it
so
will
much for
be too.
having me.